MAVAKAGA.
This is the original post that has since been deleted. Has anyone else had this guy show up at their house? He arrived at 8:17 p.m. and kept ringing my doorbell and knocking until 8:20 p.m., even though I repeatedly told him through the nest that we weren't interested. I even used the automated response because it just wouldn't leave. And of course, this all happened while I was trying to put my daughter to bed.
You know, sometimes it's the stuff we don't see that really gets you thinking. Like, remember that post you deleted?
Oh, yeah, the one about the guy at the doorbell.
Exactly. He kept ringing at like 8:17 at night. And you were trying to get your kid to sleep, right?
Wild, right? Even with the video gone, everyone's comments are like puzzle pieces. You can almost see what happened.
Totally. It's like digital detective work or something.
Yeah.
So many people were trying to figure out who this guy was. They even noticed he was dressed kind of like an Orthodox priest.
Which, if you think about it, is weird, right?
Yeah.
A bunch of people pointed out priests don't usually go door to door. So was he really a priest? Or was there something else going on?
Right. And then there's the fact that it was 8:17 on a weeknight, not really the time to be, making friends.
Especially when you're trying to put a kid to bed. That detail really seemed to get to people.
For sure. Some people were like, oh, he probably just had the wrong address.
Yeah, just a little confused.
But then others were like, whoa, hold on, that's super creepy.
It's late. You said you were interested. Didn't he get the hint?
Especially since I told everyone I even used that Nest automated response thing. Like,
Sure.
I wasn't ignoring him, I was trying to make him go away.
And that started a whole debate about how loud those Nest doorbells are.
Oh, yeah?
Some folks were all, those things are deafening. He had to have heard it. But then others were like, well, maybe the wind was blowing, or maybe he was too far away. Crazy how even something simple like volume can be like totally subjective.
It's true. You see the same thing, hear the same sound, but your experience is different.
Exactly.
And tons of other people chimed in, too. They were backing me up, saying their Nest doorbells are super loud.
It's almost like how loud the doorbell is became the stand-in for a much bigger argument.
Yeah.
About safety, security, all that.
Yeah, like how loud is loud enough to tell someone to scram? And when does being persistent turn into being creepy?
Big questions. And you didn't give your exact address, but you did say you were in the Louis St. Laurent and Savaline area, right?
Yeah, I did.
And some people, after they saw that, got even more freaked out.
One person even said they'd be terrified if they saw the video.
Especially with the whole long trench coat and the crosses.
Yep.
Spoopy, right?
Yeah. It's wild how one little detail can totally change how you see the whole thing.
Goes to show you, everyone's got a different comfort zone. What seems harmless to one person can be a total red flag to someone else.
So true. It's like that whole thing about the man in a trench coat, especially at night, automatically makes you think, uh-oh, what's he up to?
Yeah, our brains are wired to look for danger. Like, it's better to be safe than sorry.
Makes sense, right? But sometimes those instincts can make you jump to conclusions.
For sure. Like, in this case, was he just a confused guy? Or is there something more sinister going on?
It's tough to say for sure, but that uncertainty is exactly what made the whole thing so unsettling.
Absolutely. And remember what you asked at the beginning. Has anyone else had this guy show up at their house? Simple question, right? But look what it turned into. This huge discussion about safety, security, and how we deal with the unexpected. It shows you even the little things can make you think about big stuff.
It's crazy. Like, we all want to feel safe in our own homes. But how do you do that when the world feels so unpredictable?
Big question. No easy answers. But that's what we're here to talk about.
Yeah.
How to deal with those feelings, how to be smart about safety.
Right, how to navigate this whole crazy world.
Exactly. And hopefully by the end of this deep dive, we'll all have a little more clarity, a little more understanding.
And maybe even a little more peace of mind.
Definitely. So let's keep digging. It's a real challenge, isn't it? Trying to figure out the right way to stay safe.
Absolutely. Where do you even start?
I think a good place to start is with ourselves, like thinking about our own biases,
What do you mean?
Well, we all have these experiences, things that have happened to us, stuff we've seen in the news, and that shapes how we see the world, right?
Makes sense.
So sometimes we might react to a situation based more on our past than on what's actually happening in the present.
Oh, so it's like you see a guy in a trench coat and suddenly your mind goes to like every creepy movie you've ever seen.
Exactly. It's those mental shortcuts our brains take to try and keep us safe.
Right.
But sometimes they can lead us down the wrong path.
So it's not just about listening to your gut. It's about, like, checking those feelings against reality.
Exactly. Taking a breath, thinking it through, asking yourself, am I reacting to this situation or am I reacting to something else entirely?
Makes sense. And then there's the whole social media thing.
Oh, yeah. Social media can be a wild ride.
Remember all those comments about calling 911 right away?
Yeah, some people were really convinced that was the only option.
But wasn't that a little extreme?
It's tricky, right? Social media has this way of amplifying everything. Emotions, fear, even rumors. You see one comment, then another, and suddenly everyone's panicking.
And sometimes that panic isn't really justified.
Not always. It's like algorithms are designed to show you stuff that'll get a reaction, keep you clicking.
So it's kind of like they're feeding into our anxieties on purpose.
In a way, yeah. So you gotta be careful. Don't just take everything you read online as gospel.
Good advice. And speaking of strong reactions, remember that whole debate about whether calling 911 was the right move?
Oh, yeah, that was a hot topic.
Some people were adamant that it was way overblown, while others were like, better safe than sorry.
Classic dilemma.
I mean, 911's for emergencies, right? But what counts as an emergency? That's where things get murky.
Totally. When it's life or death, it's clear. But in situations like this, it's more of a judgment call. How much risk are you willing to tolerate?
Right. And how do you even measure risk when you're dealing with, like, weird behavior and you don't have all the facts?
That's where things get tricky, but there are other options, right?
Like what?
Well, for starters, there's the non-emergency police line. That's a good middle ground. You can report something that seems fishy without, like, setting off all the alarms.
So it's kind of like, hey, something's up. Maybe you guys should check it out. But I don't necessarily need a SWAT team at my door.
Aha, exactly.
That's good to know. Sometimes it's hard to know when to call 911 versus that non-emergency number.
I get it. It can be confusing. But most police departments have guidelines online. You can check them out if you're ever unsure.
Awesome tip. You know, even with all this serious talk, I gotta say, some of those comments were pretty funny.
Oh, yeah, like the vampire one.
Classic.
Sometimes you just gotta laugh, you know? Even when things are a little spoopy.
It's true. It helps to lighten the mood. And, you know, this whole deep dive, it's not just about figuring out what happened with this one guy at the doorbell. It's about so much more.
Totally. We're talking about how we see the world, how we deal with risk, how we connect as a community.
And how we stay safe in a world that can sometimes feel kind of crazy. And you know what else struck me? The fact that you reached out to your community in the first place. Just asking that simple question, has anyone else seen this guy?
It's amazing how powerful that can be.
Just knowing you're not alone, that other people have your back.
Totally. And that even when you delete the post, the conversation keeps going.
It's like this ripple effect.
Exactly. You throw a pebble in the pond and the waves keep spreading.
So even though the original video is gone, the discussion it started is still making waves.
And that's what makes this whole thing so fascinating.
It really is. Like, we're all in this together trying to figure it out.
We are. And hopefully by talking about it, sharing our experiences, we can make things a little bit better, a little bit safer, a little bit less scary.
I like that. A little bit brighter.
Exactly. And on that note, I think it's time to bring it back to our listeners. It really is amazing, isn't it? How this one kind of strange encounter sparked all these big conversations.
Totally. We've gone deep on bias, social media, 9/11, even community support.
Lots to unpack there.
But, you know, even after all that, I keep thinking about that feeling you had. Like, when you realize this wasn't just some random guy ringing the doorbell, that it was, I don't know, weird.
That feeling is important. Like, it's your internal alarm system telling you, hey, pay attention, something's not right.
So you're saying we should always trust our gut?
To a point, yeah. But we also got to use our heads. You can't just go around freaking out every time something feels a little off.
Right. So it's about finding that balance, listening to your instincts, but also thinking things through.
Exactly. Gathering information, looking at the situation from different angles, not jumping to conclusions.
And sometimes, you got to admit, those conclusions can be pretty wild.
Oh, for sure. Especially online, where things can spiral out of control so fast.
So it's about being smart, being critical, and not letting fear take over.
Exactly. And remembering that everyone's idea of safe is different.
Oh, yeah, totally. What freaks one person out might not even faze someone else.
Exactly. It's all about your own personal experiences, your comfort zone, all that.
Makes you realize there is no one-size-fits-all answer when it comes to safety.
Nope. But that's why these conversations are so important. By talking about it, sharing our perspectives, we can learn from each other.
and hopefully feel a little more prepared to handle whatever comes our way.
Exactly. So as we wrap up, I want to leave you with one final thought.
Okay, hit me.
Think back to that night, that guy at the door. What would you have done?
Ooh, good question.
No right or wrong answer, of course. It's just something to think about. How do you handle those tricky situations?
Right. How do you stay safe, but also stay sane in a world that can feel pretty unpredictable?
Big questions, my friend. Big questions.
Well, we may not have all the answers, but at least we're asking the right questions.
That's what it's all about.
To all our listeners out there, thanks for joining us for another deep dive.
Stay safe, stay curious, and keep those conversations going. We'll see you next time.
MAVAKAGA.